It's 9 a.m. and we are all here, so I will call this meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. I'm Nancy Wise, Commissioner and Chair. Let's go right and do introductions.
Pat Malone, Commissioner and Vice Chair.
Dan Ojero, Commissioner.
Joe Kirby, County Administrator.
Van Scroney, County Counsel.
Jeff Van Arsdal, Benton County Sheriff.
Teresa Farley, Board of Commissioners staff.
Erica Milo, Board Recorder.
Larry Bogan, Admin Staff.
Hi, April Holland, Public Health Administrator.
Suzanne Hoffman, Health Department Director.
Bill Martis, Benton County Surveyor.
All right, is that everyone? Okay, that will take us to announcements. And I do have one announcement today. I wanted to recognize the passing away of a former county commissioner, Barbara Ross, and say a couple words about her. Ross served as a commissioner from 1977 to 1985. Ross attended the University of Texas and earned her BS in 1956, followed by a Master's of Social Work in 1966. She worked as a Social Security Administrator, college instructor, and teacher prior to her election as County Commissioner in 1977. In addition to her service as a commissioner, Ross served as a state representative from 1993 to 2001. She continued to work with Corvallis Independent Business Association, Corvallis Homeless Shelter Coalition, Corvallis Sustainability Coalition, and served on the board of directors of the Corvallis Neighborhood Housing Services until she relocated to Portland, Oregon in 2012. And her passing away is a pretty big loss. Would anyone else like to say a few words?
I'd love to speak to that too. Barbara Ross has been a major figure here in the community in Corvallis and Benton County as long as I've lived here. And she was a real presence and had a great sense of humor and impeccable manners and Southern accent, which I enjoyed immensely. She also was a very good mentor for anyone who was seeking to enter local politics, but especially for young women. And that role is one that will definitely be missed. So I'm very sad to hear Barbara Ross's passing.
Commissioner Malone, I saw your hand.
Yeah. I knew Barbara Ross and worked with her for a number of years. I remember when she was in the legislature and meeting her at her office and getting information on what the important issues were that she was going to be working on. Probably my fondest memories of her were her parties and gatherings, whether it was a picnic at her house or kind of a famous New Year's Day party at their house on 5th and Jefferson, and her husband Joe was a little quieter than Barbara, but was very, very supportive and kind of active in his own right. Barbara had a knack for, I think, identifying candidates and issues that we should be paying attention to and help rally the troops and get support for candidates or issues. I know when she was in Corvallis, she was very active in working on the homeless issue, and she will be missed.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to say something? All right. Next up on the agenda is to review and approve the agenda. I do have one change, which is to remove item 5.5 from the consent calendar. Any other changes? Hearing none, I will consider that approved. And you know what? I just skipped over comments from the public. Are there any comments from the public today? If so, you have 3 minutes to speak. Hearing and seeing none. Now we will move into the work session. First up is our COVID Department Operations Center update with Suzanne Hoffman and April Holland.
Good morning, Commissioners. I know April has been tracking our most recent data and is prepared to share that with you today. So I'll just turn it over to April.
Thank you, Suzanne. Good morning, everyone. It feels like it's been a long time since I've seen you, but I'm grateful for not having quite so much time on your calendars. I know you're all busy. So the pandemic situation continues. As the nation and we came down sharply in cases and hospitalizations from the winter Omicron wave. A subvariant of Omicron began causing rising cases in some parts of Europe and other places. This subvariant, called BA.2, is similar to its predecessor, but it's even more transmissible. And the severity of this variant is similar to that of Omicron. And last week, the CDC estimated that BA.2 had become the dominant variant in the United States. So what does that mean? What does that mean for us? In some places, the decrease in the original or BA.1.1 Omicron has slowed. In others, the decrease has slowed. So we're seeing, instead of a continued rapid decreases, we're seeing that not continue in the same rapid pace. And in others, cases have started to increase. In many places, and including here in Benton County, we're seeing a small lifting of the tail at the bottom of that Omicron trough. So the indoor masking requirement ended on March 12th statewide and here in Benton County, and we did expect some increased case activity, and that's what we're seeing now. So we saw cases dive from the peak at 1,619 cases the week of January 9th, down to a total of 37 for the week of March 13th. And since that week, which corresponds again with the lifting of indoor masking, the start of spring break, and the statewide pause on quarantine, cases have crept upward. And for the last week, the week of March 27th, a total of 87 cases were reported, and our positivity rate increased to a still relatively low number of 5.2%. So we went from 37 to 87 cases in a couple of weeks. It's too soon to say if what we are seeing is the start of a new, likely much smaller wave of the BA.2 variant, or if it's some additional transmission of the BA.1.1, the original Omicron, mask removal, travel, or likely some combination of all of these. And it's too soon now to measure any increases in hospitalizations. They remain very low. So to recap, for last week, cases increased 67%, compared to the week before, with a total of 87 cases reported the week of last week, and that 7-day case rate was 92 cases per 100,000. We've had a lot of shifts in the way that we measure COVID and in our community transmission levels. So to translate into the newer CDC community levels, Benton County and most of Oregon and much of the country is still considered low COVID community level. If we go back to the community transmission levels that CDC had previously, which were only used case numbers, we would be in the substantial level. So that's when masks would be required, suggested according to CDC. Our hospitalizations, as I stated, remain low. Yesterday, statewide, there were 99 people hospitalized for COVID-19, and this is compared to 1,130 at the peak of the Omicron surge. And the hospitals in our region, in Region 2, Lynn, Benton, Lincoln, Marion, Polk, and Yamhill, are also much lower, with 11 total people hospitalized in the region. And that's down from 205 in late January. And here at Good Samaritan Regional Medical Center, the daily number of people hospitalized with COVID has remained in single digits. So the hospitalization picture is much improved. So should we be worried? What should we do? Are the questions that I commonly get. And it is true that right now Benton County has among the highest reported case rates in the state. And similar patterns to ours, the ones we're seeing here, are only visible in a few other counties. And the cases, when we look into them for the past week or two, they include residents from all age groups. Known outbreaks did not heavily contribute to the week's cases. We do get an internal weekly report on Tuesday, which will it'll come a little later today, which will include more detail on the demographics of the cases, the location of the cases, to give us a better idea. But it is harder without an outbreak scenario in a high risk setting to pinpoint these things, because we don't have individual case investigation at this time. So we're keeping a close eye on cases, and we're engaging in additional conversations with partners and engaging with additional community messaging. This increase in cases is an important reminder that COVID is still spreading in our communities. We urge folks who are eligible to get vaccinated and up to date with their boosters. Yes, that's now plural for many. More of that on that in a moment. And for people to continue to assess the risk and consider reducing risks for themselves and others by considering things like increasing ventilation, wearing masks in indoor public spaces, practicing good hygiene, and staying home when sick. So we had some news in vaccination. Last week, Oregon clinicians received authorization to provide a second COVID-19 vaccine booster to individuals age 50 and over, as well as people aged 12 to 49 with immune compromising conditions. And this booster can be given 4 months after the previous booster. Current resources for COVID-19 vaccines are local primary care providers, retail pharmacies, which are usually by appointment, SamCare Express in Corvallis, also by appointment. People can call the COVID-19 call center here at the county as well. And our next round of community clinics are later this month, April 22nd through 24th. So overall, I want everyone to know that we're still not powerless against COVID-19 in an environment without required universal masking. And as our collective risk decreases with lower community transmission, it also increases as cases rise. The CDC community levels reflect a low level in Benton County, as we've not seen increases in hospitalizations. At this time of relatively low but rising case rates, I'd like to encourage those who are in certain groups to consider added precautions such as masking in indoor crowded spaces and or opting to spend more time in places with good ventilation. And as a reminder, people who are immunocompromised, have underlying health conditions, are age 65 and older, or unvaccinated are recommended to continue wearing masks in public indoor spaces. Those with vulnerable loved ones can help protect them by continuing to wear masks in indoor public spaces as well. So at this time, we are seeing an increase. It's not to an alarming level at this point in terms of providing a strong recommendation for universal masking for everyone. But it is time for all of us to really think about our activities. And if you want to avoid infection at this time, you may want to consider, increasing that ventilation or putting a mask on if there's cases aren't yet high, and we can't say for sure where this will go, but we do know that the circulating strains are very, very easy to catch. And that's all I have for you. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thanks.
Thank you, April. Any questions or comments for April? Commissioner Malone?
Yeah, I guess a couple things. At this point, it sounds like not really possible to talk about trends, and we can say where we are, but not with much certainty where we're going. And so I'm always interested in trends, and I appreciate your kind of nuanced, but about we're not done with this just because the mask mandate went away in most places, that we still need to be careful. And so I guess I'm interested in the county's message to the community, just what our current situation is and how we should be acting. And so I appreciate the, keep your masks handy and meet outside if you can, or whatever qualifies for good ventilation. But I think that message is important, and it's all along it's been tough to get information out, and maybe now it's even harder because of some of the mandates going away. And if a person isn't very well informed, they can say, "Oh, it's over," and happy days are here again. And so I think we need to be careful with our messaging, and I appreciate the update. April, you've provided us with good information all along, and keep it coming.
Thank you. All right. Thank you so much, April and Suzanne. Have a great day. Next up on the agenda, we have the quarterly update from Cascades West Council of Governments with Ryan Voigt.
Waiting for the camera. Good morning, commissioners. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Molly should be joining me here in just a minute. We had ourselves on for 9:30, so hopefully she'll jump on while I'm here. Otherwise, I'll try to cover for her if there's any questions. So I provided a relatively comprehensive update for you in written format that I hope satiate some of the questions about where we're at, since it's been a couple of months since we've been here. I do have a couple of updates for you. One is this year, this last closing out 2021, we at the COG kind of decided to embark on a data-informed journey to try and tell a little bit about some of the services that we do throughout our communities and how we impact the local communities. And much like the overview document that you have for the quarterly report here, we tried to put together some information about what the COG's footprint is in each of the counties and a little bit of data to help people understand a little bit more about what it is that the COG does. I must admit that without a communications officer, taking this on was a little bit more ambitious than I anticipated, but we do have some reports that will be coming out. It's about I'm going to say it's like a longer newsletter. It's probably an 8 or 9 page document. It will go out this week, and then we will also print up some copies and send them out to you as well. My guess is that once you take a look at them, you may decide that there are alternative uses for them, you want some more copies, or you'd like me to come back to a different meeting to talk more about some of the programs that we have going on that maybe you're not as familiar with, or bring somebody along, and I'm happy to do that. This is a way to kind of stimulate some new conversation about the depth and breadth of what it is that the COG provides, and also, yes, frankly, probably to do a little bit of horn tooting on some of the great stuff that gets done. But it's really about, I don't think we've done a good job in the past about really some of our high flying programs we talk about all of the time, but there is a lot of things that we do that impact maybe a handful of consumers, but in very meaningful ways. And so making sure that that information is out there as well, since you all are thankfully putting a little bit of money into our pocket to use as match funds to draw down at about 100 to 1 on federal funds to make these programs work for you. So that's coming this week. I also wanted to let you know that at the very end of the packet that we provided, there was information about our ongoing work for the bias incident response system that, as you know, we were contracted with the city of Corvallis on behalf of the region to study what a regional approach to bias incident response might look like. And we went through a relatively lengthy process to try and bring a contractor on board to help navigate this work and pull together the community sessions. We have signed a contract with a Colorado contractor by the name of Xylo. And they are, we had the first meeting with them yesterday, and so we will have a project plan coming out very soon, including the different engagement sessions that'll be happening, how we'll be pulling people together. I think we have a meeting. I think, is Johan on? I see his marker there. So Johan, I know that we've gotten your information over to them, and we're looking at maybe meeting with you later on this week or next week. So thank you for reaching out. We're excited. This has been kind of really a slow process to get this particular project moving, and we're excited to be at the place where it's kind of getting off the ground right now. There's Johan. Good seeing you. And then other than that, much like everybody else, we're still hiring. So if you know people who are interested in serving, particularly serving seniors right now, we would love to talk to them. So I don't know if Molly was able to join us yet. Those were the main updates that I had. Any questions from the commissioners?
Thank you, Ryan. Any comments or questions? Commissioner Ojero?
A couple of things. I appreciate the update. I like this narrative form. It is useful to just get the highlights. I am looking forward to seeing the data-driven kind of footprint of COG. That should be fun. I have a couple of questions or comments. In terms of the Stand By Me program, I know you mentioned here the AmeriCorps grant success, but I also know that there's a matching requirement. And I have heard from Alicia Lucky about what size that hole is, and just wanted to let you know that we will be discussing a Benton County contribution to provide some of those matching funds at an upcoming meeting, at our goal setting meeting next week. We've been slow to respond. There's been so much going on with COVID related work, but it's time to focus again. The other was just about Veteran Services Office. I'm glad to see that you were able to bring in a new person for Veteran Services. And we're looking for his name. I know it is Mark.
Yep.
Mark Lipinskis. And I look forward to meeting the staff and to hoping they can be working in person again sometime soon. There's a lot to be done in that arena, and I feel like with all the turnover that's happened in the office over the last several years, the VSO program has been very much in a reactive mode rather than proactive, and there's an awful lot that we could be doing in the community. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that. Specifically to the Veteran Services component, we are currently moving some office space around at our Corvallis office to try and make it more conducive for face-to-face interviews with veterans when they come in. Interview space that we have is really, really tight the way it's currently structured, and we're kind of making some adjustments to that over the course of the next couple of weeks. I am thankful that Molly really prioritizes face-to-face contact. She and her staff really prioritize face-to-face contact. And although we're not, officially open in terms of having a placard on the door that says open, come on in, they are doing face-to-face appointments right now. And I think that's refreshing for us all to be getting back to that place. I know that there's still some trepidation, and we are honoring certainly wearing masks when people would like us to, but it's for me as a lifetime social worker, the being able to be face to face with somebody is life-changing again all of a sudden. So and then yes, thank you also on the Stand By Me grant component there. We were very fortunate to get a large grant from the ARPA funds coming in. There is a matching component, but this will allow us to have a full-time staff for the next couple of years. You may remember that last year we came to all the commissioners of the 3 counties with about a $30,000 per year ask. We've mitigated most of that with this grant for, I believe, about $125,000. And so now the ask will be somewhere closer to a grand total 2-year of $21,000 split across all 3 counties is really more in the neighborhood of $7,000 commitment over 2 years if each of the counties are able to go there. So I'm thankful for the conversation that you have coming up, and if you wish for me to be part of that, I'm happy to do so. Or Alicia, she certainly is compelling.
Yeah, and I have Alicia's letter, and we'll be sharing that, and Nancy as chair and Joe can talk about whether we want to have anyone else come in. I don't think we have a lot of time on that agenda, but we'll certainly be discussing it next week.
Sure. And I do note that we have somebody listed as caller on. I just want to check and see if that's Molly, if she wanted to jump in. Maybe not. Okay. Any other questions for me?
Well, I don't have a question necessarily, but I wanted to say thank you for the excellent report. Has lots of good information there. I always appreciate getting the information ahead of time so I can, thoroughly check it out. And I'm happy to hear that the bias reporting conversations project is moving forward. I remember when I was on city council and we voted to get that going. So it's been a while, but COVID has had its impacts. So I'm just happy to hear that the ball's rolling on that. So thank you. And then Commissioner Malone, I think I saw your hand.
Yeah, a couple things, Ryan. On the transportation side, would you, now that Nick Meltzer is off for a few months, who's replacing him in the COG staff? Or filling in, might be.
Yeah, Commissioner, as you know, there's really no real replacement for Nick, and we are hoping that he doesn't romanticize his extended stay in Sweden to a point where he decides to stay. We'd love to have him back. We do have a couple of our planners are going to be taking on some additional responsibilities, but your point of contact is still going to be Jenny Glass for most things. That way she can route them and she's in the loop on all of that.
Okay, that was the easy one, Ryan. Now, you didn't mention conversations with CSE and integrating functions, or talking about integrating functions, and wondering what your take is on that status. Speaking of slow-moving projects.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. I actually think that one might feel a little bit slower moving from your chair than it feels from mine, to be completely candid with you. I feel like this is, in normal times, Peggy McGuire and I have conversations almost weekly about moving the work forward, and it feels like we have gotten a considerable amount of that work done. For the benefit of all the commissioners here, unfortunately, Peggy had a bit of a absence for a handful of weeks, and she's just now returning, and I think that she probably has plenty on her plate over at CSC as well. But we did get the opportunity to have a chat the other day. Some of the key things that are happening right now is our general services directors, so our tech services, our finance, and our HR directors, are now going to be having a monthly meeting for the 6 of them to consistently talk about, is there anything changing, or are we doing anything, and should we do those together? And what I mean by that is, if we're talking about implementing, if either one of us is talking about implementing any software solution, we both should be talking about it. If either one of us is talking about implementing a new policy or a new practice, we both should be talking about it. We are setting the stage for a handful of years from now. The only thing that separates the two of us is the administrative components and the notion that one of us is a nonprofit and one of us is a not-for-profit. Now, that does not necessarily provide any of you who sit on our boards a lot of relief. You still get to do double duty for that. But at some point in time, the hope is we are operating as though we are one, and then you all can decide, do you wish to do the remaining components to make that formal? So the operational components exist. We are also have been talking about co-housing for quite some time, and now that the masks are coming off and people are starting to return to the office, co-housing is right around the corner. And we are part of a conversation about an integrated one-stop shop in Corvallis. That location has not been determined, nor has yet really the function of what that one-stop shop is going to serve. And so it is still evolving in its identity. And once that's decided, there will be more information about kind of who from each of our teams will be participating in that. We're talking about co-housing right now with Department of Human Services as well. And on the seniors and disability services side, we've already begun that transition where some of our supervisors are cross-training over at Department of Human Services self-sufficiency program, and they are doing the same over here. And I believe the report also highlighted the notion that we've been working on a kind of a universal eligibility conversation with CSC, where we are providing information to CSC about our food stamp recipients. And by virtue of having met that threshold, they may very well be eligible for CSC's utility assistance. And so we are providing that data over to CSC. CSC is then going to be able to send flyers out to all of our food stamp recipients saying, you may already be eligible. Hopefully it's not like one of those you've already won scratch it prizes, you have to come in, but you may already be eligible for assistance, with the intent that that's a backlog catch-up conversation, and that there becomes a point here in the next month or so where moving forward that conversation happens simultaneously rather than, you know, a lagging data set that then necessitates a letter. So those are some of the real practical tactile things that we're doing right at the moment. And I am also, I have also written into my draft budget, still to be approved, a project manager for the COG agency, where probably at least 50% of their time will be dedicated to actually having a project plan and specific project work committed to the joining of the two agencies.
Great. I appreciate the update, and I think project manager makes sense instead of trying to carve out time with people that are already fully engaged. On the DHS, would that is that conversation with Corvallis DHS?
Yes, Commissioner. DHS District 4 is the same service area. It's Lynn, Benton, and Lincoln counties.
Okay.
And they recently hired a new district manager. Her name is Balit, and she and I have history from when I worked at DHS. We worked together a number of years ago, and so it's great to see a familiar face there. But one of the things that we did early on in this one-stop shop conversation is we did go and tour some space that DHS has over at their new building, because they had a virtual eligibility center, they call a VEC center, for doing virtual eligibility determinations. And most of those staff are going to be teleworking now. So they have a space there that we were all looking at as a possible space for the one-stop shop. I'm not entirely sure that that's going to serve the needs of what that one-stop conversation is going to be, but we are all in a number of these conversations. So in as much as the conversation has been about partnership with CSC and COG for quite some time, you will start to hear from me an ongoing asterisk that says, oh, and DHS. So.
Well, and I was going to ask if DHS had, no, it's Oregon DHS. Got to get it right.
Oregon DHS, thank you.
Yep. I was going to ask you if they had any space there, because that would be quite convenient to Benton County's offices and beef up our presence on Research Way. So keep me posted on that one.
Well, they do have a wing that they showed us that I think had about 60 people originally staffed in it, and a couple of conference rooms and some offices. So I'm sure I'd be happy to have Balit get in touch with you.
I would appreciate that.
Sure.
Thanks for the update. And I knew there was stuff going on, but it's nice to get some details, and I think it's looking forward to more good news on this project.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I hate to do anything with your agenda, but I have noticed that Molly Murphy has joined us in case there was any VSO questions.
Morning, Molly. Well, I don't have any further questions other than the ones I asked prior, so we'll circle back if we have more.
Okay, sounds good.
Yep, I was just going to say welcome, Molly. And was there anything you wanted to tell us, or?
I mostly just wanted to highlight that we hired a new VSO in November, and he's our veteran highlight for last quarter. And we are interviewing on Friday for a second full-time assistant veteran service officer position to replace Linda, who has been our 20-hour-a-week AVSO, who is now going to be retiring in June. So it's exciting to be able to have a little overlap to get some good training in. And we have a couple of really qualified candidates, so it's pretty exciting.
That's excellent news. I was wondering when Linda was going to retire. I know it's been a conversation for a long time.
Yeah, COVID, she was graciously extended her stay with us through COVID, and now June 30th is her retirement date. So.
Yeah, well, to thank her for us for sure, and we'd be happy to send a thank you her way when that time comes.
Yeah, oh yeah, and we're going to try and plan some sort of retirement get together for her. So I'll keep you guys updated with that as well.
All right. Thank you so much. Well, Ryan and Commissioner Malone.
Yeah, this is a follow-up on Ryan and transportation. We've had the Corvallis Transit. Right now, the bus service is every 2 hours on Research Way. There is better frequency at kind of either end of Research, but as far as going down there and so any kind of more staffing in that area makes that conversation easier to justify. It costs money, and that's not the main problem. Right now, the main problem is lack of drivers. So, since we're all going to be neighbors, or potentially we keep in touch, and because that is ongoing conversation. And, maybe Nick from Sweden can weigh in and say what a good idea that is. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And thank you, Ryan and Molly. We really appreciate you coming today and spending some time with us. Have a great day.
Thank you.
All right. Next up on the agenda, we have report on the first quarter biennium and capital improvement projects. And we have with us Rick Krager and Jen Ambule. Welcome.
Sorry, Commissioner, having a little trouble with my mute and camera buttons here this morning. So thank you. Good to see all of you. Yes, we are here today to give our first financial report for the 21-23 biennium. Just as a background, and I'll turn this over to the real expert here shortly with Jen, and she'll walk you through a presentation that we have prepared for you. But as you recall, right after I had first started, we had started some conversations around how do we want to provide you financial information ongoing. My goal is always to give you information that is helpful, but not information that requires you have to do tons and tons and tons of reading and digging through papers. My hope has always been to be able to get to a place where we could get to more of a benchmarking type presentation, to where we can say, okay, here's kind of what we're seeing from a budget standpoint, and here's some things that are trending wrong, and we're going to red flag this, and we're going to tell you a little bit about it. That's kind of what I've been trying to work towards. And so in your packet, we have provided our first step as it relates to providing that overview report. And you'll see here shortly, Jen will walk you through the presentation to kind of highlight some of those areas and to be able to call out maybe some areas that we have somewhat concerns about. I think for the most part, you're going to hear a presentation that looks pretty good from the standpoint of where we're at and where we're trending. But there are a few areas I think that Jen will want to talk about and point out to you. In addition, we'll talk a little bit about, as always, the Capital Improvement Project Fund and what's going on with that. We recently had, actually it was my first meeting of the CIP. And so there was some small changes that were made to that. But again, I would like to provide you an overview on this. As we go forward, I really want to encourage you, commissioners. I have thick skin here, so if there's something you don't like, something that you would prefer to see more of, less of, please let us know. We just want to make this better for you. We know you're all very busy, but we also know that you take a lot of pride in stewardship and financial accountability, and we want to ensure that we're giving you the best information possible. Again, just what you will see here is an attempt to really get to a budgetary type format, to where we're looking at departments and we're looking at true funding sources within those departments at a fund level, and then giving you an idea of where we're at from an expenditure standpoint against those approved budgets. We also will dive into some of the more probably funding sources that you're more interested in, like the general fund and the local option levy, because obviously those are the more flexible dollars and the ones that we would just definitely want to make sure that you are aware of any changes in that. We're always capable of diving in deeper if you like. I've looked at your past reports, and obviously they dove into a fund level, and we're always happy to do that. But again, we want to make sure that it's information that is helpful to you. So just keep all that in mind as you go through this. We are open. We want to only provide you the best information, and appreciate any feedback. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Ambuel, who will walk you through the PowerPoint presentation, and we'll both be here for questions that you may have, and pointing out variations of different types of things that are going on. So with that, Jen, take it away.
Just turn yourself on.
Looks like Jen might be having a little bit of technical difficulty. I think she's been muted by the organizer, it says.
Don't do that.
Hello.
Sorry about that, Jen.
Oh, that is okay. I was just wondering, this is my first time actually using the phone rather than headset, and I was like, what did I do wrong? Good morning, commissioners. It's a pleasure to see you this morning. As Rick stated, we're going to walk through the newly revised and updated format for financial reporting. And I just would echo what he has already said to you, in that if you want to make changes, please speak up, let us know sooner rather than later. We're here to make this simple for you. So the first thing I want to do is go through a PowerPoint presentation that at this point is directed to the entire county budget for the first quarter of the biennium, so expenditures and revenue, from July 1st of 2021 through December 31st of 2021. All right, the first item that we're going to touch on is the revenue. Specifically, I want to discuss what is the beginning balance for this biennium, what's the ratio of restricted versus unrestricted revenues across funds, what does budget versus actual look like within that? And then we'll dive into the resources by fund type, and then the resources by source type, and compare that against a 25% threshold for the first quarter. All right, so beginning balance, also sometimes called fund balance. So those are used interchangeably, just for your own reference. I'm working on being consistent, but it is called both items. So for the entire county budget for 21-23, 68% of our beginning fund balance is restricted in nature. Restricted in nature implies that the balance is dedicated by law, contract, policy, ordinance, or a grant agreement for a specific purpose. And then 32% of all the beginning fund balance across all funds may be used for any purpose. Our beginning balance continues to grow. The unrestricted balance is 10% higher than anticipated when we built the budget last May. And this is allowing the county to maintain healthy reserves. The unrestricted balance, from what I could see just by doing a general look quickly, is that the property taxes came higher last biennium, as did the state taxes, primarily driven by alcohol and marijuana sales tax during the COVID pandemic. Next, we're going to talk about resources. The other term for this would be the revenues. If our biennium was divided into 4 quarters, the first quarter threshold would be that 25% level. We are going to use this for general benchmarking only, and there are exceptions to that 25% estimate. An example of that would be the collection of property taxes does not follow that 25% estimate because we primarily collect the bulk of them annually once. Okay, so our budgeted revenue by fund type. The bulk of our revenue falls under the major governmental funds, which include the general fund, the local option levy fund, ARPA, road fund, and many more. In your packet, there was a biennium budget revenue page. It was the first page, and that would provide further information on what is considered the major general governmental funds. There were too many to list on a PowerPoint. The enterprise funds and the internal service funds both run very close in terms of budget, one at 22% and one at 20% of the budget. And then also the thing to note, that tiny sliver for fiduciary funds, while it says 0%, it does have a revenue budget of 1.6 million, but when you compare that to the total county budget, it is very, very minuscule. All right, so now we're going to look at revenue budget to actual. The blue bars on this graph do represent the budget for the 21-23 biennium, and the green bars would be actual through 12/31/21. The yellow line that you see recognizes the percentage of actuals compared to the budget. So for example, for general revenue, 41% of the budget has been collected to date. And that is driven, like I said, by property tax returns. And then the white line is just our threshold marker of 25%. So we can just have a visual of where we stand in terms of our collection. Total of all of our resources received to date is at 25% of the budget. Expenditures. We will touch on expenditures by department using that 25% threshold benchmark, and then do a comparison of expenditures to revenue. So the same concept applies here. We have the green bars are the budget, the blue bars are actual to date, with the white line representing that 25% benchmark, and the yellow line representing the percentage to date in actual. As you can see, we do have a department that has exceeded the 25% threshold line, and we do have one also right at 25%. Those two were triggered, and so we will discuss them a little further down in this presentation. Fleet services is one, it comes in at 28%. And then the East Lynn Health Center is exactly at 25%. So we decided to look at those a little further. And it is important to know that AFSCME retro payments are not in these figures because this is only through December, and that just recently happened in March, trying to jump ahead to spring already. And then I would just say, if you want further details on the exact percentages rather than just looking at the estimate, you can look at page 2 of the expenditure document that was provided in the packet.
And Jen, if I might, just real quick, if you could jump back to that. So this is a graph I really like, just because this sort of gets to the heart of what Jen and I are trying to do to get to that place of indicators. And so this yellow line obviously tells you a lot that we're trending very well below what we would expect. Now, again, she did mention the ASME contract isn't factored into this, so I would expect that it would be ticked up more. But again, this is sort of like, okay, if it crosses that white line, then we might want to have some discussions. In both cases, you can see that where we cross, they're just slightly over. But the message really here is you can see that all departments are trending well, what I would consider somewhat well below what you would expect at this point in the biennium. Now, that creates opportunities potentially for us. It also, there may be, obviously a lot of other things been going on with vacancy factors. That's a huge piece to this, as well as just the overall COVID, less travel, all of the above. Those all factor into that. But these are things that we're going to obviously want to explore further as we go into the biennium, where there may be opportunities for us to move some particular agendas or initiatives forward as we have more budget capacity. So sorry, Jen, I didn't mean to jump in.
No, that's perfectly all right. So next we're just going to look at actual revenue to expense for the entire county budget. The quarter one statistics, revenue is at 25% and expenditures are at 19%. Now, again, I'm going to state that property tax collection skews those numbers. If we were to remove that property tax collection just to get a comparison, both revenue and expenditure are trending at about 19%. All right. So as I had stated previously, we are going to do just a quick little discussion about fleet services, looking at the internal fleet services department portion of revenue to expenditure, and then the external side of fleet services revenue to expenditure. Internal fleet, the revenue is coming in 3% higher than expenditures at the end of quarter one. Like all the other things, you'll see the disclaimer. It does not include any beginning balance, transfers, etc. So the internal fleet services is actually fairly healthy and doing pretty well, and nothing to really be concerned about at this time, other than just keeping an eye on it, because it does make up a portion of that 28% trigger. The external side of fleet revenue, this is really more the side that we need to still continue to keep an eye on. This is not news to any of you commissioners. We've had this discussion before. As it stands right now, the external fleet revenue is 4% under expenditures at the end of quarter one. And then I also wanted to note that I did remove the equipment purchases for other agencies from the revenue and expenditure side of this, simply because it was skewing that expenditure percentage even higher than the 28%, simply because it is an in and out service and a very large purchase most often. And I wanted to paint a little clearer picture on what this actually looks like without that skewing factor. I don't know if you guys want to discuss this at all at this point, or just continue to the East Lynn piece and maybe talk about it all at the end. Entirely up to you. We're almost done with the PowerPoint. And so I think if you could just wait 2 more slides, we would be okay.
And Jen, if I might, just real quickly on this, and again, we can have a chance here at the end of the presentation, but I just want to highlight the fleet piece here. Joe and I have had, this was one of my first conversations with Joe as I entered the county, and really looking closely at the fleet, both the internal and external. So I've been working very closely with Gary and Keith, as well as our business analyst, George Looney, on this. I think there's a couple things I want to point out on this. When you look at internal versus external, first of all, just from a financial standpoint, it's essentially a wash between the two. So when you look at the internal and external, they're pretty much in line. One is obviously a surplus, the other one's a deficit, but in total, they wash. I say that because there is still conversations that we are having with Public Works about how best to cost out external fleet. And I think that that's a conversation that we have made some progress on. As you know, there's always a methodology that you have to land on as it relates to how do you apply a cost to a particular business. And that's really what we're talking about here. Is there other opportunities for us to maybe improve? I will say that I think it's a good methodology that we have in place, but it always has room for improvement. And there are likely some opportunities to where maybe there are external or internal costs that really should be better applied to external, or vice versa, external to internal. And so I just wanted you to know that this is an ongoing conversation. And as we go in further into the biennium, you will see probably at the next presentation a little bit more firming up of this. I would not want to react quickly here in the first quarter, just because I think we need some time to just do some further analysis. But if we get into the second quarter and we're still trending this way, it's probably time to have some conversations about, okay, what do we need to do? What do we need to change? What do we need to look at? And again, we've already talked to Keith and others about, fees and other opportunities that we might have to improve this. And obviously this has also been impacted by the pandemic as well. So again, just wanted to point that out to you. I know that this is an alert that we're doing here, but also wanted you to know it's an alert that we will need to continue to monitor before we react too much. So.
Right. The other piece is the Eastland Health Center. We're just going to look at revenue to expenditure in terms of actuals. As of the end of Q1, Eastland Clinic revenue is 6% less than expenditures. Currently, restricted balance is keeping the fund in a state of surplus. It does remain a watch status, and I can tell you I have not had adequate time to really dig in to see what is causing this. I think we need to, we being myself and Jane, sit down and look and see why revenue is lagging so far behind expenditures. I'm fairly certain it's probably going to be a timing issue, but at the same time, the fact that it was running right at 25%, drove me to look into this, and then comparing revenues to actual in terms of expenditure, find that different. So going forward, it just becomes one that needs to be examined. And that would be the end of the presentation PowerPoint.
And Jen, just one, and then I'll shut up, but last quick comment in terms of Eastland and commissioners, I'm learning a lot about health here over the last couple of months. Both Jane and I, especially with the departure of Sandy, have both tried to dive into this and doing our best in learning. I think as you all know, the health centers is very different. Is very different from any other type of governmental activity, particularly when it comes to financial. And to Jen's point, this is really a timing issue. And this is something I'm trying to get my head around, is that when we're looking at financial information like this, it's usually assuming there's probably about, a pretty large sum of accounts receivable that hasn't even been collected yet, because it takes time to process through insurance companies and getting payments from clients. And that's really what I'm trying to figure out, is how do we get more predictable as it relates to health centers and those revenues? Because when you look at this, you could react and say, oh, wait a minute, boy, this looks problematic. But you're not seeing the full picture, because we do not accrue for receivables that are outstanding for services that have already been rendered. So that's something I've been working through, and will we continue to work with the board, the health board, as it relates to this in terms of financial information. So again, I just wanted to put that point out there for your information. And I know many of you that have worked in the health field and have probably tracked that pretty closely. So with that, I'll turn it back to you.
All right. First, before we even continue on, are there any questions or comments on what we've already discussed?
Commissioner Malone?
Yeah. I like the format. I think it is a good start for the right level of detail, and appreciate. I mean, you folks deal with this on a daily basis and know kind of the rest of the story, just like you were talking about the health centers and how it may not look good on the PowerPoint, but if you factor in receivables that will come, it's just a timing issue. It did take me several slides to figure out that a quarter meant 6 months. So I did get over that finally. And let's see. On fleet, do you know if they're fully staffed? I know in the past they've had openings, and so.
Yeah, Commissioner Malone, thank you for the question. And unfortunately, I know that they have been down a mechanic, which has been, one key piece that they have continued to be recruiting for. And unfortunately, it sounds like they're going to be down in a second one as well. So those are certainly impacts that work against us as it relates to the revenue generation piece. But I know Keith and Gary are working real hard to try to recruit.
Yeah, thank you. I know that's been a challenge for the last several years, and it is critical to having them function like we would like them to. But so I think that was. Can we go back to on the package slide number 11? That was a little confusing. Yep. Let's see. So the blue bars there, let me get it on my larger screen. I'm a little confused. So blue is actual.
So so Commissioner, and this is, I know that this is one you have to look at for a little bit, but it's kind of telling two different stories. So just kind of focusing on your bars there. I mean, your green is essentially what your budget is for the biennium for each of the departments. And then the blue is telling you how much has actually been expended against that budget for the biennium. Then if you think about, okay, percentage of that blue to the green, what is that? And that's what that yellow line is saying. So what we're saying is that what you would expect, every department would be at 25%, which is your white line. That represents kind of where you would want them. And as you go through, you can see just about everybody, with the exception of fleet, that's the one that jumped up there at the top, is above the white line. And then over at the very end, you see East Lynn, and that's the one that Jen pointed out. It's right. So it's kind of telling two different stories. It's telling your budget versus your actuals, but it's also doing a trending for you to give you an idea of which departments are, well, how close are they floating to that threshold line.
So the important line there is the yellow line.
Yeah, I think that's the key piece for us as we go forward with giving you information. If we start to get definitely if we get over that line, you're going to be hearing from us on why. But I think we also at some point need to start talking about, well, why are we so under? There are areas where we're under. Now, non-departmental is a little bit of a hodgepodge of different types of things, so that's probably to be expected. You get a lot of different types of grants, CDBG, other things that go into non-departmental. But obviously, if something falls too low, we would probably want to have a conversation. I'm sorry, Jen, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I was just echoing ARPA is there, so that's going to be a big driver on budget to actual expense because we haven't expended it yet.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you. Yeah.
Great. I appreciate that because I was having a hard time making sense out of it. But
Commissioner Ojero, I saw your hand.
I just want to comment that I really like this presentation format. I think it does highlight the information that we most need, and it very quickly, as we get used to these visuals, we'll be able to assimilate the information. I just wanted to echo that need to look at too low a spend rate as well, and to look at trend over time, and just getting to know that the seasonality of some of these ebbs and flows of funding, because some of it's predictable, but if something looks like it's really off in terms of timing, then that's another warning sign that we need to be aware of. So it sounds like you're starting to get a real good feel for that, Rick, and that is helpful as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Ojero. One thing to, as we get better at our forecasting, Jen and I want to get to that point where we really master sort of that, what you said, seasonal. So we're making an assumption here that everybody should be spending at the 25% level. Well, I think that's safe, but, there could be reasons that this time of, the first 6 months you're spending more. I think property tax revenue is a perfect example, as Jen pointed out, is that, once we can get a better command of those seasonal type things, we could say, well, maybe the threshold really should be 28%, or should it be 20% now? And that's something that we can learn and get better at as we move forward. One other thing I just wanted to point to you, and Jen, if you could go back to the beginning balance piece, I just wanted to, that little pie chart. So commissioners, I just wanted to link in sort of another conversation that we all had back in, I think, November, December. And this is another piece just so you can tie it all together. That 22.7 million that you see there, that's a key number. And the reason is because that's sort of our, well, it's unrestricted, but it's also sort of that, what are we going to be measuring to determine, can we take on debt? Can we look at other opportunities? So you might remember when I gave you the debt presentation, this was the basis for that. And so the good news is, as Jen pointed out in her other bar graph, which I think is the next one, is you can see that we estimated at 20 million unrestricted, but we came in at 22.7. That's a good thing because obviously the more that grows, that's the better financial reserves that we have, and that we can maybe look at other opportunities as it relates to issuing debt, or perhaps even just using those dollars directly. So again, just wanted to link that back for you. And as we talk more, we'll be talking obviously about debt a lot more in the future. I just wanted to make sure it all kind of tied in a bow for you.
Commissioner Malone?
Yeah, I guess once you get comfortable or get us comfortable with this format, as far as that kind of seasonality or anomalies, it might make sense to have, well, where were they last year after the first quarter? Or so if there's a pattern that, oh, well, that's normal, like the property tax example, that's normal for that revenue to come in, and it's real close to past year or two, or however far back it makes sense to have the chart. But that might also kind of help explain highs and lows.
Commissioner, that's a great suggestion. Jen and I will take note as we think about these presentations going forward, maybe how to add some historical type components so that you can have some comparison. I think, the challenge I think we've had with previous historic, probably the last 2 years, is that they're probably really not a good representation. So that's something we'll just have to be mindful of. But obviously, as we start to pull out of everything, we get back to some level of normal, then those comparisons can really tell us a lot of information. So that's a great recommendation. We will take note to make sure we improve on this going forward.
All right, thank you. And I'll just share my thoughts, which are, I really like the PowerPoint. I like the slides in the PowerPoint. That's helpful. The information that was in the packet, that's solid. I might have some additional thoughts that could maybe be helpful for additional formats. But it might be easier if we talk about it offline, so I can shoot you an email.
That's great, Commissioner. We appreciate any and all ideas. Like I said, we want to provide you what is most helpful, and we would take anything you have to offer.
Awesome. You guys are great. Any other information or anything else you would like to share?
Yeah, I think Commissioner Jen wants to just walk you really quickly through the other part of this is the CIP.
It will be very, very quickly, simply because there's not a lot of information to share as of the end of December. As you can see, the adopted capital improvement plan was a little under the $3 million earmarked for the biennium, and as of December 31st, $5,192 had been expended. A lot has changed since budget adoption, and you aren't going to see that reflected on this document, but you will see that reflected on the second quarter reporting. As Rick had stated at the beginning of the presentation, we have had a CIP meeting. We have made some changes to the adopted CIP plan in terms of there were some projects that were moved to ARPA or were no longer needed. So we did free up some funding and then reallocate some funding to, I believe, 2 or 3 different projects now that we had more than $900 available. So you will see that going forward. As of right now, not a whole lot of activity. I would say at least last biennium, and again, COVID has an impact on all of this. We've been slow to start and slow, to make some progress on the expenditure side of things and getting some projects going. So just something that we will be keeping an eye on. I know that, well, I'll leave it to Rick to say, because I know his thought is, shovel-ready projects, and he can put it much more eloquently than I could. So I will let him speak to that.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. Great job. And just wanted to say that, I did participate in my first CIP meeting, and as Jen attested that there are some minor changes. This was as of 12/31, so you'll see those changes coming forward. I will say during that meeting, and Joe, I think, echoed this as well, is that we really want to have a meeting this summer with the committee to talk about progress, because it concerns concerns me that $3 million is a lot of money, and this is important dollars to put towards shovel-ready projects. And we have a lot of things that we can be doing. We've talked a lot about things like Emergency Operations Center and dollars that we might need. And so when I look through these projects, I guess I just want to have an assessment of, okay, are we going to be able to move these things in the next 15 months? Because these are dollars. I mean, these don't carry. You rebudget this again. So this is an opportunity, as I look at it, is that if projects aren't ready, that's okay. It's okay, but let's have a discussion about projects that are, because I believe that there are a fair amount of needs that we have through the county that we could maybe put this forward. So I'm looking forward to this summer when we have that discussion about where we're at. I will say, just looking at this report, to point out to you the facilities piece, I feel pretty good about. Those dollars are well within spending, because most of those this is a portion that's also married with ARPA dollars for our Calapooya. I know that our research, our HVAC system, all those things are things that will be moving along. I'm interested to know more about the NAPE projects as well as the road and bridge, to see kind of where are those standing in this summer. So again, just want to put out to you that I think that there could be more opportunities as we think about projects and where we could put this money to the best use in the next, well, at that point, it'd be the next 12 months. So thank you.
All right, Commissioner Ozero.
I think in future it would be very helpful to see all of the CIP projects in the context of general fund allocated CIP dollars and any kind of other funding we have. So if the next time around we can report it, if maybe with another column that has the ARPA dollars as well, then we might get a fuller picture of where all of our investments are going.
Great point, Commissioner Ozero. That's a really easy one for us to do because we are tracking that pretty closely. So we can make sure that you see the whole picture for these projects.
Question then, Commissioner Ozero, do you want to see an updated list of all the projects? So for example, there are some that are completely funded by internal service funds, or are you just wanting to see ARPA and the general fund portion of the CIP? There's a lot of projects.
Yes, there are, and I think maybe we need to figure a dollar threshold or some other criteria for those other projects. Because I understand what you're saying. I don't know enough to provide a good answer for that.
I can do a mock-up and then maybe send to Joe to communicate with you on what that would look like. And you guys, he could get a response from all of you and then let me know. So going forward for the next go round, we could look at what that might look like.
And one place to start, Jen, might be just starting with all CIP approved projects and then what other funding sources are attached to those CIP projects themselves. I think if you get into some of the internal ones, you might get to a threshold that might not interest the commissioners as much. Not saying that you wouldn't like it, but it's just to try to keep it, because I think the CIP is really dedicated to more of those major type projects. And I think just getting a picture of the entire funding, that might be a place to start, but then we can build on that if necessary.
Commissioner Malone.
Yeah, like you pointed out, this is lagging information. How soon can we get a first quarter or first eighth, however you want to talk about it, report? I'm looking at the Public Works evacuation route, and I know there's activity there. I don't know how the billing works, but I think the county was tasked with design work, and my understanding is that's should be fairly well complete. And like I say, I don't know how the billing, the work, actual work versus the billing. I don't know that cycle, but I would, being on the CIP committee, I'd appreciate at least updates every 3 months.
Yeah, Commissioner, I would just say, I think this echoes sort of the discussion we had at the last CIP. Is I think as that particular committee needs to really be staying in tune to what's happening in all of these projects, so that if there are some course corrections, we can make those sooner than later. So I can assure you, at least on the CIP level, the committee level, that's something that we have talked about in terms of keeping good information up to date and where we're at, and having discussion about course corrections. I think part of what I'll need your direction on is how much of this information to bring to the board. If this is routine enough, if you want it more routine, I'm always happy to bring more information to you if necessary at a different juncture, if this is something you want to look at closely.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Ozero?
Yeah, I guess I'd like to think about the frequency of information. Every 6 months for a general report seems pretty good, but of course there are those high-level projects that we like to know more about more frequently, but we have other opportunities to hear about them as well in departmental meetings. My related question is this the rhythm that you would expect us to see moving forward, that we will see a report about 4 months after the end of the period, or is there a way that we can get them a little bit closer to real time as we move forward?
One, I would say the intent was 3 months, and it just really, I worked my hardest with Teresa. It just wasn't going to fit in actually your guys' schedule, and it gave me a little more breathing room. I could see about getting it done sooner if that's what you like. I'm not going to make a promise that I can't keep. I think it would be very easy, especially for the first and the third quarter, to get them sooner. The second and fourth, that's year end, and so there's a lot of different pieces that don't hit the books in time to do those ones sooner. But I think that we could definitely work on making, like I said, the first and third happen a little more real time compared to what it is.
Thanks. I understand that it's a challenge, and I just want to make sure that if there's something that alarm bells that we should be aware of, that we are aware of them in a time frame where we can suitably act.
Well, and Commissioner Oger, to that point, I think, this is obviously sort of the formal financial review per our financial policies. But like you said, I think there are a lot of other opportunities that we can maybe institute to where we're getting, a kind of a quick peek at kind of where things are going, maybe not to the formality that this is, but at least to where we can say, hey, let's take a look at the CIP projects, because, we're usually about 2 to 3 weeks after the close of a month until we get everything closed up. So, we could probably be doing this within a month. Not to this formal, because I don't want Jen to pass out in terms of, having to put the formal report together, but plenty of opportunities for ad hoc. And that's something that we can work with you and Joe on to figure out, what's the best venue to do that.
Commissioners, I just wanted to weigh in real quickly as well. I would be hesitant to try and do this entire report on a quarterly basis. I think it is helpful for the board to have a pulse on things. However, I think considering staffing challenges and workload, 6 months every quarter should be a good cadence for us to try. That's what we're used to doing. Until today, I hadn't heard that every 6 months was not frequent enough. And so just cautionary note regarding our staffing and our ability to perform lifts like this, which this is important information. We want it to be available to you, but I think quarterly is something that we should continue to shoot for. If we, meaning quarterly based on our biennial budget, if the board has a desire for us to highlight certain projects at goal setting meetings or department meetings as it relates to the CIP, we can certainly do that. I'm not concerned about the CIP budget yet because many of the projects that are listed on there are infrastructure projects, which we wouldn't expect for those to kick off until this summer. But if you have a particular interest in capital projects, we can do something somewhat more frequent, maybe in a different format. But once again, I would really discourage us trying to do a full-blown financial report on a calendar quarterly basis. I'd encourage us to stay with our current cadence.
All right, thank you. Any other information or questions or comments on this agenda topic? Hearing and seeing none. Thank you so much, Rick and Jen. We appreciate all the good information.
Thank you. Have a great day, commissioners.
You too. And now I would like to call for a short break. So let's come back at 10:36. All right, it looks like we are back and we are moving into our business meeting. First up is the consent calendar. And do I hear a motion to accept the consent calendar without item 5.5 or a motion to pull anything else?
I'll move to approve the consent calendar and removing item 5.5.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Do we do that right, Vance?
You did indeed, and now it's time to take up 5.5.
So we do need a separate motion for it.
Yeah, I presume one of the reasons you take up once you've taken it off the calendar.
No, we've removed it. Sorry, we removed it. We removed it from the agenda earlier today at the beginning of the meeting.
Sorry, I misunderstood. Then it is set aside for some other date. So we just move on to next item. But Zan, interject.
I just wanted to address the fact that the reason we removed item 5.5 was that the deadline for the submittal of said letter was such that it needed to be in by 6 p.m. last Friday. And so instead of a letter over the on the Board of Commissioners letterhead and coming from all of us, the most expedient way to deal with that last Friday was just to have a letter go from one commissioner. And so I ended up going ahead and assisting the Economic Development Office in that case. I want to acknowledge the fact that could do things. And so Joe will be reaching back out to the Economic Development Office and make sure that if we run into this situation again, that we handle it a little differently.
Thank you. All right, next up on the agenda, proclamations, item 6.1 in the matter of proclaiming April 2022 National County Government Month. And we have Teresa Farley with us. Welcome.
Good morning,
And
commissioners. Hi, Johan. Did you want to go ahead and introduce anything or do an introductory before I
Yeah, I
start?
could do a quick introduction for you. So I am honored to have Teresa Farley give our speech or read the proclamation for National County Government Month. Teresa, as many of you know, is this week's entering to a part-time retirement. And I thought it would be a great honor to have someone who's really done some excellent service for our county be one of our readers for this proclamation. So thank you for taking the time to read this out for us, Teresa. And Teresa's been really a critical part of our proclamations happening because she has been the person that's kept me on track to make sure these are getting written in a timely manner and everything. And I just appreciate all the work that she's done. And I know Larry will be transitioning into taking on that part of the role. And Teresa will still be working with us, thankfully, but I think it's a great honor to have her be our reader today. So thank you, Teresa. Take it away.
Great. Thanks, Johan. Appreciate it. In the matter of proclaiming April 2022 as National County Government, since 1991, the National Association of Counties has observed April as National County Government Month. This month honors and celebrates the work that county governments and their employees are doing nationwide to help their communities. The nation's 3,069 counties and county equivalents serve more than 300 million Americans, providing essential services to create healthy, safe, and vibrant communities, and provide public health services, administer justice, keep a community safe, foster economic opportunities, and much more. The 2022 theme is Counties Thrive. This acronym stands for each core area of this year's theme, which are the following: T, technology, equipping counties to expand broadband access to ensure all residents can learn, do business, and communicate effectively. H, health, improving our overall health and well-being. R, readiness, preparing the county workforce to gain the skills they need. I, infrastructure, strengthening resilience and the backbone of our communities. V, vulnerable communities, advancing equity, strengthening the safety net, and ensuring that our community members have what they need. E, economic opportunities, creating conditions for all of us to compete in the 21st century economy. Benton County has a variety of projects, programs, and initiatives that cover the Thrive areas, such as the new Calapooya building, the American Rescue Plan Act funding opportunities, Hope Advisory Board, and many others. We thank our county staff for their service to the Benton County community and our partners. As we face a global pandemic of COVID-19, counties are the front line in emergency response. All across the United States, county public health officials are working with emergency responders to prepare for, prevent, and manage COVID-19 infections. Counties are truly on the front lines of managing the coronavirus pandemic. Nationwide, we are responsible for nearly 1,000 hospitals, 1,900 public health departments, 800 long-term care facilities, and many other functions that keep our community healthy and safe. Counties are a critical partner at the table with federal, state, and municipal leaders to support economic resilience and to address health, safety, and equity across America. Benton County, as one of the original counties from before the establishment of the Oregon Territory, has a long, distinguished history of service to its community members and continues to adopt innovative practices to serve its community members in the present and the future. Now, therefore, the Benton County Board of Commissioners hereby proclaims April 2022 as National County Government Month and encourages all county residents to actively participate in their county government. Adopted this 5th day of April 2022, signed this 5th day of April of 2022.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you.
All right, and do we need a motion to accept the proclamation? Do I hear a motion? Commissioner Malone.
I'll move. Well, thank you, Teresa, and considering what we've been through the last couple of years, I think this is really appropriate recognition and vision for the future. I like the Thrive theme, and so I will move to approve April 2022 as National County Government Month, Proclamation E 2022-004.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Good job, Teresa.
Joe?
Thank you, Commissioner. I would just like to recognize Teresa. We're in the midst of a transition over the next couple of weeks, and Teresa has been just amazing, not only for the last 16 years, but in my mind in particular, the last 2 years. She was just such a stabilizing force during COVID. She pitched right in and wore multiple hats. She still wears multiple hats today. And so it makes me proud when I hear her read the proclamation to have been able to work with Teresa. And certainly she'll still be around our office, but she won't be assisting with this meeting or the agendas any longer. And I just wanted to take a moment to thank Teresa for all of her service over the last 16 years.
Definitely.
Thank you, Joe.
And I would just like to add to that too, that, back before I was a commissioner, I'd come to the board meetings and Teresa's smiling face would always be there and welcome me in. And I'd sit in the back and she'd always say, do you need anything? Here's a copy of the agenda. And she was always just so helpful and just one of my favorite people to see there. So thank you, Teresa.
Thank you. Thanks for the kind words.
And Teresa, we know where your office is, so.
Darn, I'm gonna have to lock the door.
We'll just bother you through the window. No. Well, thank you so much, Teresa. All right. So next we can move on to 7.1, discussion and decision to approve the affirmative action plan. And I have Eric Wilkie listed on the agenda. And I just wanted to note to my fellow commissioners that the document was not in the packet until this morning, but we did get a chance to review the document at a previous work session. So if anyone has any concerns about that, please let me know. And with that, Eric, you are up.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. On the 15th of March, I came before the board to review updates to the 21-23 Affirmative Action Plan, as well as updates to the county demographic data. As far as changes in the AA plan, there was, I added a few things: diversity statement, updated org chart, obviously updated workforce data, and at the request of Commissioner Oshiro, there was a duplicate diversity, equity, and inclusion statement. I believe that's on page 114 in your information. So I got that updated. And Joe Kirby, the county administrator, he asked that the affirmative action plan asked that Johan's the diversity, equity, and inclusion coordinator. They asked that he review the plan. So on March 28th, Johan reviewed that plan, and he didn't have a lot of input, but I've been having a lot of conversations with him, and I've told him I want him to be more involved in that process. So as we look to going through the biennium, we'll be looking, obviously updating probably towards the end of this year, starting to looking at the next biennium. So I wanted to include Johan in that process. And as far as some of the outreach efforts we talk about in our affirmative action plan, we've also included Johan in our recruitment huddles, because we want to get his perspective on how we're doing outreach, where we should do it, those type of things. So that's our big goal. Not only diversifying our applicant pools in the county, we just want to get our jobs and positions out in front of as many people as we can.
All right, any comments or questions for Eric? Or do I hear a motion?
I just want to say thank you for taking into account our suggestions and for bringing Johan more centrally into the process.
Commissioner Malone?
Yeah, similar comment. It's kind of reassuring to have Johan looped into these conversations, especially as challenging as the hiring environment is currently, but not forgetting some of our goals. So I will move to adopt the 21-23 affirmative action plan.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, thank you, Eric. And thank you, Johan.
Thank you. Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you.
And we can move on to item 7.2, discussion and decision to approve an acceptance of easement from Northern Wood LLC. And with us, we have Joe Martis. Welcome.
Can't hear you, Joe.
Is there a mute button on your headset maybe? Vance, you want to sing us a song while we're waiting?
I think you really want me muted for that.
Commissioners, I had to buy noise canceling headphones now that I have an office next to Vance because he really hits some high notes.
Oh, that's funny.
My guess is, Joe, you don't even know if I'm in here most of the time. It's so quiet.
Teresa pointed out there's the option for Joe to call in if this isn't working. I'm showing him as unmuted on my controls.
All right, it looks like he is trying some things.
Can everyone hear me now?
Yes, yay.
Okay. Had to go to my phone. The agenda item is acceptance of an easement from Northern Wood LLC. This is along 19th Street. If anybody knows the Philomath area, you kind of go north and just south of the railroad tracks. They're planning on doing an office park there. And our engineers looked over the engineering plans and they left out something. There's some wetlands along the road there, so a ditch and a culvert has to be put in for a future sidewalk because the city's going to expand. So the design for a sidewalk is needed. So that's the reason why we need to put in a drainage way and a culvert at that point. They'll definitely have to put in a retaining wall so it's not in to get into the wetlands. So we resolved that problem, but we will need the easement for the county to maintain this future structure along the road. Anyone have any questions?
Commissioner Malone?
Excuse me. I remember a discussion. I think this was along Chapel Drive, so it may be a different issue with the developer and dragging his feet on the improvements to the drainage that needed to be made. Is this the, you know, if this is the same project or a different one?
Well, this is a different one on 19th Street. Also, we're making the owner put in the improvements, of course, because he's the one developing the property. But the county will, it's in the county right away. This is what we're trying to get it into the right of way, that we maintain those structures until such time as the city actually grows a little bigger, the city of Philomath, and then we can have sidewalks and curbs and gutters, all those good things. So it's good to get out in front of all this.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Joe? Do I hear a motion?
Yeah, I'll move to accept the easement granted to Benton County by Northern Wood LLC for a drainage way and culvert.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up, 7.3, discussion and decision to approve an acceptance of a release of covenant, Franson property, also with Joe Martis.
So there's a large fir tree. It's off of, if you know where the town of Blodgett is. And there's a road that was built up in that area. And there was a large fir tree. Well, the county, they like trees too. And the neighbors like large trees. But the only thing is it was in the right of way. So we wanted to put a covenant on the property with the owner as having to take care of the tree and being responsible for it. And the thing is that here recently the tree has been cut down by the new owner. It wasn't everybody, and there wasn't a covenant on the tree to stay or anything. It belongs to the owner of the property, and so we don't really have a say on that part. But we tried our best to at least maintain the tree and come up with an idea, if not to make the county responsible for the tree falling down. It was a fairly large tree, over 4 foot in diameter. Since the tree is down, the owner has requested that the covenant is no longer needed, and that's for sure. There's not a tree there now. I have went out and took a look at it and with my engineers, and there's no problem removing the covenant now for the tree.
All right, any comments or questions? Who knew that the Board of Commissioners would need to approve a tree coming down? Do I hear a motion?
I'll move to release the covenant recorded as document 2017 days 563-344 from the property described and owned by Timothy and Kelly Franson.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye. I think what I found interesting about this process was that I didn't realize that covenants could be reversed at the decision of the Board of Commissioners. And so that's a new understanding for me. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Joe. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Vance.
I just want to clarify, Joe said he took a full team of engineers out to verify a tree had been cut down. That seems a little overkill, Joe.
Well, not a whole team. I only have one engineer, so. And he's a young guy. So. But we want to make sure that the roots and the stubs and things are not going to bother us either. So, so I wanted to make sure that that part is not going to be a problem. And we decided that that's not going to be a problem because it's not just the tree limbs, it's actually the roots too.
Very good. Well, thanks for looking out for that. And thank you for coming today and helping us out with all this good stuff.
Thank you.
Have a good afternoon.
You too.
Next up on the agenda, we have item 8.1, discussion and decision approving the county assessment function funding assistance, the CAFA grant funding.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me? Okay, good. Okay, good morning, commissioners. I'm here to present the annual CAFA grant application for fiscal year 2022-2023. The proposed amount for the board to certify it is $3,015,421. This amount will generate an estimated $421,000 for the fiscal year to cover about 18% of costs of assessment and taxation functions in fiscal year. Staff recommends the board certify the amount to the Department of Revenue.
All right, comments or questions? Do I hear a motion?
I would happily move to approve the 2022-23 CAFA grant document certifications and resolution as presented and authorize the Chief Financial Officer to digitally sign the online documents on behalf of the Board of Commissioners and submit them to the Oregon Department of Revenue.
And I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Quick
Oh, go ahead,
question.
Yes.
And that is, I know that every year in the legislative session, there is an attempt to get a little bit more money to cover the assessment function from the state. Has there been any forward progress in that arena in terms of willingness to help counties out with this role?
I haven't heard anything about it. I don't know if Rick has heard anything about it.
Yeah, Commissioner, no, I have not heard anything about that. Doesn't mean that it isn't happening. I can certainly do some follow-up though on that and see if that's something that has been discussed. I mean, obviously, long session coming up in February, legislative concepts will probably start going in the fall. So I'm sure we'll start hearing some chatter about that as we move into the summertime. So I'll see what I can find out for you.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, any other, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying thank you.
Well, thank you very much for coming. Any other comments or questions on this agenda topic? Joe?
Thank you, Commissioner. I just wanted to once again recognize Larry Bogan. Larry joined us for the first time yesterday. This is his first week in training. Larry will be responsible for the agenda checklist, the board meetings, and so it's great to have him as Teresa transitions out. So welcome, Larry.
Welcome, Larry.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to other. Is there anything else for the good of the order? Hearing and seeing none, I will adjourn the meeting at 11:03 a.m. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.